Yeah. So yeah, my name's Calvin Arsenia. I am, well, present myself mostly as a musician, but I think of myself as a host and a curator of moments of transcendence. I'm always looking for things that bring people together to tell stories in the most effective way, to get us to be in unity as fast as possible. And so by whatever means necessary, and I tend to incorporate fashion and smells and tastes along with my the music that I make, to help bring those stories to life.
That's a much bigger explanation than I was anticipating, but it's so exactly true just from my smaller knowledge of you. What drives you for that? What is the need to bring people together and into a place of unity for you?
I think I'm fascinated by how similar we all actually are. Um,
Yeah,
that I think we live in a world, and we are a species that loves to divide and to categorize, and in those categorizations make them very concrete, or that we have, we judge everybody else based on the rubric that we have assigned to ourselves, or the agreements that we, the society that we were raised in or that we have chosen to be a part of. We agree with those, with that rubric, and then we judge other people who've not agreed to that rubric. and
a very good way to put that.
and I, and so I think, there's something in me that is so curious about what does it mean to be essentially human, and what does it mean to be alive, and what does it mean to be thriving, and how do we find ways to build bridges of empathy with the least amount of resistance possible. And I think that there is so much division in our planet, and specifically within our species, that is affecting the world. Um, and um, and I think the only way out of it is by seeing ourselves and our people and ourselves in other animal kingdoms too. I mean, that's kind of sounds very hippy dippy, but the love of a mother, or the love of a son, or the love of a brother, like, these things exist, throughout all living things. And I feel like what I'm trying to do with my art is to just show that, that even myself as a black male, as a black queer individual, like, that doesn't make me any different. Well, there are differences, of course, but there's more similarities than there are differences. and uh,
Absolutely, yeah.
and I and it's my joy to show that.
Did you have, I don't know, maybe a sort of a first or an epiphany moment or an experience that you were like, "Oh, this is what I want to do. This is the thing I want to recreate for myself and the people around me."
Yeah, well,
Was that a concrete moment or was it maybe just over time?
definitely have highlights. I was raised, or I found myself from a very young age being a part of the evangelical church. So my first, experiences around music was around worship, and inside of a service. And so I was trained, kind of as a 12 and 13-year-old, playing guitar and singing with worship teams, um, to bring people together in song. Strangers that have all come from different, on a Sunday morning, for instance, right? And like, people come in from different, situations. Some people hung over from the night before, or some people who are so reverent and devoted to Jesus, and praying all day and night and memorizing their scripture verses. And somehow, as the musician in that situation, we were supposed to bring people together in one voice and one accord. And there was always something incredibly powerful that happened when the congregation was together, and when we were all singing in harmony. And scientifically, when we exhale, we are at our most relaxed state. And so singing is like is the ritual of prolonged exhalation. and
Yeah,
so there's something,
absolutely.
it's like um so primal in the act of group singing, that I became addicted to it. And and there's so much inside of the church. Like a lot of my life was preparing for Christmas services and
Sure.
Christmas concerts, and preparing for Easter, and preparing for these summer camp, and these very high emotional um, moments that are also, you know, kind of retrospectively, now that I have left, nobody's ever seen God, right? And nobody's ever seen these. I mean, people can claim that they have seen the ripples, or the shadow,
Sure, like the
right?
wind affecting the tree kind of thing.
Exactly, but we've never like
Yep.
laid our eyes on him, and so a lot of my job was to create an environment that let people use their imagination to manifest this emotional expression. And I think that at some point, I was able to see other people outside of the context of the church do that as well,
Mm-hmm.
and to see that it was possible to have the same kind of experience without the fear of hell, and
Yeah.
without feeling like I owed my devotion, or my emotional experience to someone else. Um, and I also really loved some of my time with other faiths, and the way that they worship with taste and with smell, and the ritual of food, um, and super inspired by the Passover with the Jewish faith,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and how they would talk about, when God brought us out of Egypt, when God brought us out of Egypt. It wasn't because, as a Christian, we were always talking about the Jews and their relationship with God,
Yeah.
um, and kind of like being jealous of that closeness. But then when I
The
had
chosen people, right?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah. It's
and
very
so
othering.
then to share the table, to share a meal, and to feel like, no, God, that was our family, that was our people, that was like who we were, um, was such a powerful thing to witness. Not being the bystander, but being the one, in the child, the
Mm-hmm.
family. So another part of my life, I was privileged with the assignment of being a Montessori classroom teacher.
Yay, where were you at? Just because my kiddo went to Montessori.
Yeah, it was a small Christian school in Shawnee, and
Okay.
so I was not Montessori trained, but I was around teachers who were, and I could see the
Mm-hmm.
passion about it, and I loved this idea of facilitating discovery, and kind of responding to curiosity, and trusting the human mind to take itself um, through all the questions of what's important at an age, and essentially, like, if a child has formulated the question, then they deserve an answer.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yes, if it's in your world that you can create language and speak and ask about it, you deserve to know what that is.
At least to the degree that it's available to us at the time.
Right. Right.
Uh,
It's not always appropriate to go into the entirety of it, but answering the question as asked.
yeah, and I was always so curious as a kid, and I was very. I remember being very burned by adults who were annoyed by my curiosity. Uh,
Sure.
because at the time, this is before the internet really happened.
You can go find it yourself.
Right, like, this is the out of date encyclopedia, which I scoured through, and it was just Ask Jeeves when I was at my aunt's house, like that was like such
Hmm.
a fun thing.
Oh,
But
good old Jeeves.
so so I think, so another part of, like, working in the Montessori classroom was I was really studying and trying to figure out how do I teach well, or how do I, and I realized that you really don't teach, you present, and you entertain, and you facilitate, and you prod.
Hmm.
People have to teach themselves, uh,
Right.
and that everyone has different learning styles, right? They are their body, their mind, their facilities have their own way that information comes in easily,
Hmm.
and so you have kinesthetic learners who have to do the thing. There are people who are visual learners who have to see it. There
Mhm.
are people who are audio learners, and they can hear instruction
Have
and
no ability to do that, by the way. Like, as soon as you start talking at me, I'm just like it's like Charlie Brown's parents. It's all just wah, wah, wah. Like, I need you to write it down so I can
yeah,
read it, or I need you to just let me do it and
yeah,
just tell me as I'm doing it. But I can't take verbal
yeah,
instructions that way at
and
all.
and
My
so
brain just shuts off.
and this is like so important for us to learn how, to me, learning one's learning style
Mhm.
is a version of self-love. It is like a deep
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
core part of self-love.
Mhm.
And my father, growing up, he never went to church with us because he was a lot like you, and that the sermon didn't do anything for him. Like audio
It was just
talking
being
at him,
talked at. Yeah.
but his love language is doing things with his hands. He loves to work on cars, and every time, like, he likes to, yeah, he like fixes things, and he's a tinkerer, and his the way he navigates life is with his hands. And so, I was often very frustrated with him growing up because of that. But seeing students in my classroom who are similar, right,
Mhm.
made it to me that I can't just teach, and this is so tangential, but just we're gonna get there. I
It's all
can't.
good. I know you'll land the plane. I'm not worried.
Okay, good. I can't just teach in the way that I learn, because then that doesn't make me an effective facilitator of learning. I need
Mhm.
to be able to present the same information with the many different ways that people receive information. And
Mhm.
so, I was teaching French and music, and I would teach them how to count by counting grapes and M&Ms, and we did colors with fruit, and if you wanted to eat it, then you had to ask for it in French. And we did a lot of work, with different instruments, and just introducing them to the different instruments, and making sure that they felt like they were worthy of holding them, that they knew how to hold them and how to respect them and to value them. um, and that time in the Montessori classroom made me realize that it's not just students, and it's not just a classroom where this information is relevant. It is everywhere you go. And it's the person who, at the checkout line at the grocery store. It's the person who's doing your taxes. It's the person who, your lovers and your loved ones, and it's your children. It's your parents, and it's the audience. And so, if I want to be an effective artist, it is it is it is my it only benefits the effectiveness of my art if I create multiple avenues for people to receive it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's very similar to one of the communication hallmarks, of interpersonal communication. It's on the burden of the communicator to be understood.
Hmm.
I can say it to you in French, but if you don't understand French, it's not going to do any good. I have to figure out an avenue for you to understand me. And, that can certainly be exhausted.
Yeah.
And with some people, they might deliberately try to exhaust you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
miss your point.
Yeah.
But I can see how that would be very much a similar tenet across maybe mediums for you. It's not just the harp, because maybe somebody is deaf, or maybe they don't hear that register, or they're just not a music fan. So
Yeah.
you layer in your visual pieces and your other sensorial pieces to sort of bridge that gap and be really inclusive
Yeah.
in the experiences that you're building.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly that. I learned at some point that scent is the strongest, like, connection to memory. Think about, when with my album release concerts, for instance, I will have a specific scent that I have assigned to that show. And then when I have the deluxe edition of the vinyl or the CD, I sent that CD with the same scent that the show was scented with.
Mhm.
Um, and hopefully,
I
to
love
me,
that.
it's like I'm trying to install a memory into somebody's
Mhm.
mind, and something that they will always take with them forever. And I think a lot about how, people come to these shows, and sometimes this is the only thing that they'll be able to get to for 5 years. or like
Yeah,
because they might have, kids or health things, or they move away, or like in life just gets away at them. Not everybody gets to experience a concert all the time, and so I want to honor their time by making it something that will be worth talking about in 20, 30
sure.
years. And I just really, I know that that's how um the greats have thought about music and about concerts, and that we have the ability to offer permission to explore certain emotions, or to talk about certain things, and encapsulating it through the mechanism of the performance, allows for sometimes big and scary concepts or ideas to be very manageable. And I really, I'm fascinated by that process, and I think that's what keeps me going.
Side question based on scents. How many scents, colognes, perfumes, oils, mists, whatever, would you say you have in your home?
Oh my gosh, that's really embarrassing.
Just, just because I think the last time I was there, you pulled out one that was earthworm scented, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then so,
That was a very memorable moment for me.
did
Nobody.
you wear it?
I did. It smelled lovely.
Yeah, it's got this weird sweetness to it. So okay, let me
Yeah.
explain. So last year I had my most recent album release concert. It was for my album Paradise. And Paradise is actually kind of a paradox, because it's a lot of heavy material that I wrote during since the pandemic, and a lot of issues around human rights and equality, and black lives in that album. And it's very like not peaceful piece of work. um,
Sure.
but I think that the point of it to me is like, we wrestle with these things, and allowing myself to wrestle with these things for a good, 4 or 5 minutes, or the duration of the album, and then I feel a little bit better having gone through that journey, right?
Hmm.
So paradise is something that you have to keep within you, and it's a choice you make. It's a place that we have access to, and again, coming from a background of religion, I the creation story to me is one that is just a horrible story. Because on the first page we lose access to the place where we were designed to be, or at least that's how the story goes, right? But on the
Right.
very
Yeah.
first page we are no longer allowed to be where we were made to be. And I just feel like
I've never thought of it that way. But yeah, absolutely.
day one, page
Yeah.
one.
I have never put it together like that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, you don't even have to turn a page, and we've already disappointed everything forever. And
Right.
so I just feel like there's got to be a way for us to reframe our existence, in the idea of belonging, and the idea of having a right to be generous, or have a right to be good. I feel like we are. I was trained. I won't say everyone, but I was trained to believe that I was sinful beyond repair, and that I did not have the ability to be good by myself, or that I didn't have the
Hmm.
ability to make choices. And so therefore you kind of relinquish responsibility for the good and the bad that you do. I know, growing up, I was so prone to say all the glory to God when people would say, "Hey, good job on that." Well, all the glory to God, right? I wasn't taking responsibility
You could
for the
just say
work.
thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many people I've seen that, that behavior, that custom, that
Deferring.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the same goes for bad things that people do. They're like, well, God will forgive me, and I don't have to really, I don't have to do anything to repair that
Sure.
relationship, or take it to God, or whatever. It seems dismissive to me. And so I, was tracing back, like, where did evil begin, or where did the heartache begin, where did racism begin, where did all of these things begin? And I just went back as far as I could muster, and it took me back to the first page of the Bible, which was for a long time, my context of what was true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for so many millions of people that are living on planet Earth, that is their context for what is the most true thing. And I think, yeah. So I wrote a brand new story for the creation, how creation happened and how humans began to exist, and it was that God loved humans and he created them in his image, or in their image actually, because God should be non-binary, and that there was love everywhere, and that he designed us, or they designed us to explore, and gave us permission to love and to be at peace with the animals and at peace with each other. And eventually humans became selfish and started hurting each other, and that was something that they decided to do. But the context of the show was as if there was like a grand reunion of the heavenly bodies, the angels, and the humans of the earth, kind of coming together for a garden party. And I wanted it to feel like we were outside but inside, and so
Uh-huh.
um, we wanted it to smell like a garden, and so we had earthworm as one of the main scents of the
Was
experience.
this the one with the ice cream where
Yes,
Camry made all the ice creams? Okay, I was wondering because I remembered all of the ice creams having a sort of sinful or religiously themed
yeah,
kind of, yeah,
yeah, milk and
interesting.
honey and forbidden
Yep,
fruits. Yeah.
that was, yeah, she did a great job. Those were delicious. What would you say you talked about the church, but do you have maybe an early specific musical memory, whether it's a first song or a moment with your parents where you connected over something, or just like your earliest musical memory?
Hmm. Okay, this is gonna be very funny, but like my favorite place to sing when I was a child, like the earliest memories of music, was me singing in the bathroom.
I
And
love that.
like hearing the reverb and playing with the reverb, and like what, like I would just spend hours in there singing to myself.
That's fantastic
Like
though. I
making up
mean, you were
songs about,
playing with it.
yeah, making up songs about like the animals who I was obsessed with at the time. Like I was really into like frogs and learning all the animal names, and I would just make up songs and sing to myself like as early as like 5 and 6 years old. Um, and and being outside in nature and playing with bugs and stuff. Yeah, I was just always singing, and and I remember seeing a harpist for the first time when I was probably 4, I think.
That was my next question, was when did you first pick up the harp? So,
Yeah, so the first time I saw one was at a church service, and yeah, I think I was 4 years old. We were living in Florida at the time, and but I think at some point I realized that harps were mostly played by women, and I was afraid of being girly for a lot of my life. Although I always kind of um, felt more comfortable with feminine things. I was really into yarn and painting. I mean, things that have been now assigned to be feminine, but I really don't think they actually are.
sure. Well, and
But
you take it back a couple hundred years and it switched. So,
right, yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just, yeah. I really I love softer things, and um, which are not necessarily feminine. But yeah, so like, yeah, painting. I was really into like acrylics and learning how to like mix colors really well, and creating these beautiful paintings, and really into yarn craft, weaving and crocheting and knitting, and and but at the same time, like I was often afraid of being accused of being girly, because it's just a thing, right? I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of 3 boys and going to school in suburbs. Like it's just not a lot of nuance when it comes to gender expression in that way. And um, so I avoided the harp for most of my life. Um, well, it was most of my life. It's coming now to less or more of my life. So I started the first time I touched a harp, I was 20 years old, and I had been playing guitar and piano for about 8 or 9 years by that time. And singing all the time. I was in choirs growing up, kids choir, and then choirs in college, or sorry, in high school. And then in college, I started studying classical voice. But I think I finally just kind of got over it. I was like, everyone thinks I'm girly anyway, so why wouldn't I play the harp,
Do what you want.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they already think that. I don't care anymore.
Good.
And so yeah, I googled, I googled harps in Kansas City, and there was a woman by the name of Harp Lady KC, and she had several harps in her basement that were available to rent. And I couldn't afford to take lessons from her at the time, so I just opted to rent the harp itself, and then to just kind of do YouTube and play around with it for the first year. And then about a year later, I was given an opportunity to move to Edinburgh, Scotland, and within 2 weeks of being there, the cravings to play a harp just became too much, and I found another harp to rent when I got there, and took lessons from the harpist of the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. And her background was in both classical and folk harp styles, and so she kind of helped me find a middle ground kind of technique.
So this is going to be a really weird question, but
Mhm.
I am somebody who has recently, uh, I've really learned that how much I've historically lived and fully existed in my head as a human being and very little body awareness as a person. And so now I'm so curious about the physical experience of creativity
Mm,
and that yes, that where you sort of I know you know what I'm talking about. When you almost it's some people call it the zone, but when you are in it, you are flow is
yeah,
another word for it. Um, how does flow feel since you know that one? How does that feel to you? What does your body feel like to you when you are in a state of flow?
yeah. Um, it feels so relaxed and like floaty, like my arms are weightless. I'm thinking about like times when I've been able to like improvise for a long time on the harp, where
Okay.
where I'm not like thinking about um I'm not reciting, I'm just listening and responding. um I think about like when I'm writing either lyrics, um writing on a page, and thinking about talking about shapes and stories, and like finding things to compare things to. um yeah, it feels like a possession, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
like,
It's a
like
little bit out of body,
yeah,
but very in your
like
body at the same
like you
time, like
just
out of mind, maybe.
yeah, like you're just a little bit bigger than your body.
Oh, I
um
like that.
yeah, your my energy feels like it's yeah, just in the outside. It's just it's warm, and
Expanded.
yeah, it's swollen. um
Mhm.
but not in a way that's like tight. It's like free.
What are times that you have so many creative outputs and so many ways that you find to sort of express yourself. Have you had times where you struggled creatively
I
and you didn't want to pick up an instrument or paint or write? You just wanted to like lay on your face.
think my struggle is like, how do I find the time to be in my happy place um as often as possible? And that's really more of the struggle. Like when I'm
Sure.
given the time and resources to be creative, or to tell a story, or to manage a feeling, I have lots of feelings.
I love what
And
you just said there, time to manage a feeling.
yeah,
That's I don't think that many people necessarily think about it that way of like a this has been going on and now I have space to tackle it instead of continue to shove it over there or I'm going to think it to death.
right.
But like now I have a moment and I need to address and move through this.
Yes.
Was yeah.
And for me, that's a kind of a deep core of my artistic process, is like, um 'cause for me, songs are like a salve, and
Hmm.
and sound is like, um is a potion, and using different textures and sounds allows you to make the medicine for the feeling. And I so often I will like go and try to find, or I'll find a song that really scratches an itch
Hmm.
that helps me feel good, or to kind of process an emotion or manage a feeling. And then there has often been a time where I feel like there wasn't a song to 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 help with the thing. Be that a celebration, like it's not always negative feelings, right? It's
Sure,
like
sure.
it's just
But
like how do I,
there wasn't something adequately available.
yeah, and
Hmm.
that's when I start writing, because I need to process the thing anyway. Still, and I
Yeah.
imagine that there are other people who probably need to, who have also felt this feeling, and the current of modern pop music tends to be kind of shallow. Maybe is a fine word to use without sounding
Mm-hmm.
too judgy, but and there's obviously a time and a place for that too. But I
I
try
was
to,
gonna go with hollow,
yeah,
like
yeah,
hollow.
yeah,
Yeah.
thin.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I try to write music that that feels honest and truthful, and to me, and that helps me feel those feelings, and allows me to, experience a 3 to 5 minute version of it, and then continue on, right? And then I put it in a jar, like in a recording, and I put it on the shelf.
Uh-huh.
And then when I need it, I go back to it, and I share it with my friends and with my fans and with loved ones and strangers, um, and so far the feedback is good.
I would say so, yeah.
um,
Um,
yeah,
is there, as you have worked with other people and seen their own creative processes and things, has there been, I don't know, anything of note that you've discovered of just like, ooh, that's even like, even if it's something that you're like, whoa, that would never work for me, and it is fascinating that it works for you,
yeah,
or something that you were like, why am I not also trying this out? Like, have you seen other creative, I don't know, just movement or processes or things that people, even in other mediums, have done um, to kind of keep themselves in flow or access flow or what have you?
yeah. Um, I want to give a couple examples. I remember coming across a writing session with Sia,
Hmm.
like on a mini documentary or something, and she had a musician, kind of just like picking the chords on the piano and playing a loop of these chords, and then she had like an idea of like a feeling that she wanted to go for, and then she just kind of like mumble scatted sang over top of it and kind of came up with like a melody. And then as she mumbles, like the words just kind of like form, and then go around again and just mumble a little bit something else, blah blah
That's not unlike how Dave Grohl does it, I think.
blah. Mm,
I remember seeing something about him being interviewed and talking about like he comes up with the guitar and the melody line and things first.
yeah,
And then as he's playing it, he just sort of mutters until, oh, that's a phrase. And
yeah,
like, yeah. And then
yeah.
that's why some of the lyrics are maybe a little nonsensical
Mhm.
because.
Yeah, that's not how it goes for me.
When I used to write songs, that wasn't how it went for me either.
Yeah.
So I get it. I'm very much lyrics first, and then
Uh-huh.
I might, but I'm also don't play instruments. So
Mm,
any melody would just sort of be a thing that got stuck in my head.
mhm, yeah.
Mhm.
No, that, and
Yeah.
I think that's a really important part of it too, is like the earworm nature of the song. I mean, at least I think so, because I write stuff all the time, and if it doesn't make it home, then maybe I didn't need it. Um,
Yeah. That's yeah. It wasn't meant to be. Wasn't
yeah,
for you.
or it's just for that moment. It doesn't need to be like in concrete, and I think that that's also something that I would maybe recommend to other creatives. It's like you don't need to monetize or share every creative thing you do. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it's just there for you, and that's good. That's a great thing. Um,
Yeah. It's you can have a little spark of something that is just yours.
yeah, it's just yours. Like,
Mhm.
and we get to do that. And I feel like, in an era right now where everything is about content creation and like, and sure, I write songs and I share them and I put them out and I make albums and I do that. I mean, this is, one of my primary roles in life. But at the same time, like, it's so important to remind myself that like my creativity is for me first.
I
And
love that. Yeah.
like I don't owe it to anyone.
Do you feel like you feel so strongly about that because of your religious history? Because that sounds so much like what you said earlier at the
Yeah.
beginning
Well, it's
about it's for you, it's your own piousness, it's your own experience.
yeah. No, that's definitely something that I'm continually working on reclaiming is that my body is my body and my mind is my mind and my creativity and the things I create are mine and I get to take credit for them, and also be grateful for the opportunities and resources that have been that I've been lucky enough to participate in. But yeah, my singing and my voice and my love of playing music, like I think sometimes in my experience with being on a label and and or just being like the person that people are expecting to always show up and do a great job. um, like has
The
some
burden of quality.
right. Which I feel very deeply, um uh that sometimes robs the joy of being a creative, of being a person, and is often what.
Having to hold everything you make up for a consensus is pretty exhausting, I imagine. And I think too there's something really beautiful and sacred of something that is for your eyes only.
Mhm.
Like it's locked away, it's in the ark, it's just yours.
Yeah. There's, like, a lot of these, like, tiny phrases that I have collected over the years, like, little choruses that will never be songs, but that are so still precious to me and remind me of people I've loved and, moments that have happened to me, and
So I have I loved, this is not surprising to anyone who knows me, loved James Lipton so much. I would watch Inside the Actors Studio right now if you wanted to. It is so much fun for me, and I loved all of it. And so I picked out 5 final questions
okay.
for to kind of bring it all home, if you will.
Mhm.
So what is a piece of art that nearly always moves you?
I'm gonna give you 2 songs that changed my life. No, 3. I'll give you 3 songs that changed my life. The first is, New World by Björk from
Okay.
the movie, Dance from the Dark and from the album
Yep.
Selma Songs. That is number 1. Number 2 is, John Wayne Gacy Jr. by Sufjan Stevens.
Uh-huh.
And then number 3 is Palincepe by, the Bulgarian, women's choir from, there's a recording from the BBC, and, and those are, yeah, I'm always every time I hear it, it's like the first time, all 3 of those pieces, yeah.
What is it about each one that is so meaningful for you?
I think there's a great, beautiful, like, tension in the Björk piece, in the horns and in the music. It's so theatrical and driving, and yet the way that she's singing and the words that she's singing are so, like, mundane and approachable, and I think this idea of creating a context um, for the paradigm of life, that it's in small moments that we make the biggest victories, and then things that feel really big end up being quite small and insignificant. And I think that Björk in particular has a really great way of creating those different perspectives with her music.
Sure, yeah.
Um, Sufjan Stevens was kind of one of my first acoustic love affairs.
I
Uh,
can absolutely see that, yes. That makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have picked it out, but now that you say it, sure, yeah.
yeah, no,
Yep.
I adore him, and coming from a background of very um, operatic music and like big sounds. I think I was so charmed by him being so audaciously soft, and
Yeah,
um,
that's a nice way to put that.
and with that song in particular, John Wayne Gacy Jr. It's a song, a biographical piece about a serial killer, and within 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm transported into feeling empathy for somebody who has been ostracized, and in some cases rightly so, but he brought humanity to a person who I would have otherwise said was worthy to be killed. And I think it always has helped me since hearing that song, um, and really feeling it the first time. Yeah, it just never. It's disarmed me from being able to judge a person, um, like on just their actions, and and that there's always a spark of humanity, worth finding, even in the most despicable people.
That's
And
lovely. It's a very powerful piece of work that can do that.
yeah, yeah. And then Pilots of Pay. It's a song about the birds, I think. Birds. I don't know, the direct translation, but it's used as a style of singing called twanging, where
I'm not familiar.
it's uh, it's a very bright and lots of it's very forward in the mask,
Mm-hmm.
and very like nasally, maybe even. Um, but the way that the women's voices layer and stack with all the harmonics just like splashing around, again, it was kind of in total departure from my classical kind of hooded sound where it's very round and warm, and their
Mm-hmm.
voices were so bright and electric, and it's a totally a cappella piece, and all women, and to hear just like these like deep rich altos come in and this like um very soaring soprano just like splashing and like sound like a hydrant. I don't know. It was just like how dare you be so joyful, um, and unashamed, And I think growing up, some of my own like psychology with my voice too. Like I was told as a younger person a lot that I sang through my nose, and that was something that was kind of an accusation again of being girly or effeminate. That was something that effeminate boys do, and um,
It's
and so I think
amazing the things that they can find to just other people. Like just the most arbitrary shit, right? Like, really? That's what you're gonna get a bed at? Okay.
right,
Blows my mind.
and so some of my like masking, the double entendre of that word, as a young musician, was to use classical music as a way to sound more masculine,
Hmm.
and classical vocal techniques, and so again to hear this very bright, very nasally, very like twangy singing style, but to hear it so beautifully and masterfully done was just something that like just totally annihilated my thoughts around the voice. And yeah, it's really cool.
So, my next question, if you could collaborate with anyone alive, who would it be? And I am specific to alive because this is also a manifestation practice.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah, I
like
mean, I
think
would.
big, man.
Yeah,
Or
well, I've
small,
always
whatever
wanted to
works.
work with Björk. Um, I think that would be so much fun. I think we would just click. Um, Beyond that, though, yeah, no, I mean, all of my kind of musical heroes that are still living. I'd love to work and write with Lana Del Rey. I would love to work with Sufjan. I would love to work with one of my other favorite bands is the Dirty Projectors.
I'm
Um,
not familiar.
they're so good. Um, and Amos Lee is a hero of mine.
I feel like just and not to project anything on you, I feel like there's not a lot of people that you would be like, absolutely not. You
Yeah,
and I can make nothing together. Oh,
Yeah,
way with you.
right. No,
You're
yeah,
generally
exactly. Like,
pretty like, "You wanna do what? Yeah, I can go."
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and let's figure out what what we can do together. And I wrote a song with had a co-writing session with somebody who on paper, um, one would say we had not much in common, but it was a really interesting writing session because I felt like um, it was my desire stepping into that to find where we had where the Venn diagram overlapped.
Mhm.
And so you're right, there are so many. And it's like the game. It's my game, uh, that that I play in living a life where I am in a position and in a place where I am historically and modernly othered, and it's like I'm trying to see how quickly I can get love to happen here.
Sure. So how fast can we, as from a creative perspective, you do this usually and I do this usually, but where does that overlap? Or maybe where do they just play to each other? Like
Yeah,
where can we make those differences complement,
yeah,
even if they aren't?
yeah.
Yeah.
I played this show one time, and this guy came up to me afterwards. It was like at a festival, and he was like, "I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am, and we probably have nothing in common. I'm like, a tax attorney and old white guy, but I just wanted to say that I really liked your music." And I was like, "We probably have more in common than you think. Have you ever been in love?" And he was like, "Uh, yeah."
You've been hungry, correct?
Right, exactly. Like the core like tenets of being a human and being
Right,
alive.
just you've experienced all of these motivations to
Right,
just go through life. No, it's a real
right,
good call out.
right. Like don't other yourself unnecessarily from me. And I hope he remembers that because I do. I certainly do.
If you could give your younger self a piece of encouragement, what would it be?
It's something that dawned on me recently that I am currently living my younger self's worst nightmare. I am an openly queer man making music for something that's nothing to do with Jesus. I say that because I would say what I think a lot of people would say to themselves, their younger selves, which is just stay true to yourself and like find your joy and pursue that because that's what living is kind of about. Finding your joy and finding your passion and getting lost in the fun of learning and studying and being around the things you love and sharing that with people who love those things too. But even though I in some ways I could say that I'm now living my childhood worst nightmare, I think it's something that I always hoped I would also be able to do is to live truthfully. I explore a lot of that in my book, and I'm just going to do a shameless plug about that.
Yes, do it.
The book is called Every Good Boy Does Fine, and
Mhm.
it was kind of a retrospective half memoir, I will say, because I certainly have not lived most of my life yet. But it was a look back on the beginnings of my religious days and kind of the ideas that I had wanted to live my life when I was kind of accepting the suburban situation. Some of my reconciliation with my family history that's related to the slave trade, and kind of just processing that really really candidly. I wrote it at the end of 2021. When I was sure that the world was over, and didn't think that anyone would ever read it. But it made it to be printed and published by Andrews McMeel Universal, which
Perfect.
the same people that publishes Rupi Kaur's books. Yeah, has been on the shelf at Barnes and Noble all over the country, which is really weird.
Congratulations. Like, no, really, that's not a small thing. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you remember what your reason? Of course you know why you have gold on your fingers. I'm curious if you'll say it the same way again.
Oh, I don't know because I wrote about it in the book, so I know what the book says.
Okay.
Um, but I think, but then I'm trying to think about like when it started and how it happened.
So this would have been around this would have been like end of 2020
Yeah.
because we were all still social. We were having this conversation very far away from each other.
um, I mean, one of the reasons that I started painting my nails was because I'm a harpist and I'm not a dancer, and the thing that moves on me on stage is my fingers, and so
Hmm.
I thought I wanted to decorate them in a way that was visually pleasing and stimulating for the audience. Um, but then but then I also feel like I was painting them gold, and I still have them gold a lot of the time because because I want everything that I touch to be magical and to be beautiful and um,
That's exactly how you said it the first time. Yeah, no, genuinely. You said, I paint them gold so that everything I touch turns to gold. And
yeah,
it was such a clear intention and visual reminder for yourself and expectation to set
yeah.
that you could see every time you moved, that I thought that was beautiful. So what is a different creative expression that you would love to try? I mean, you've done so many, but what's one you haven't done that you're like, maybe down the line I'm going to start chainsaw sculptures?
I know a guy that does that. He's very strong. Gosh, there's so many things. Um, I I really want to get back to visual arts. I loved painting as a younger person. Um, I love just like the mixing of color and bringing line and hue and warmth and creating depth in the 2D form. Um, I also would love to do more culinary arts, and I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. I think cookbooks are kind of dumb, but that's because I'm not a person that likes to read the instructions. I
Sure.
like to play with it, right?
Play with it and
Um,
figure it out. Yeah.
right. But I do feel like one of my things that I like to do is to cook food that is like very soulful and rich, but use ingredients that are maybe not as caloric or traditional with but still receive like the same kind of mouthfeel and sensation.
Hmm.
um, but not like I don't know, not just tofu. Like just like how do we make this thing like very exciting and nourishing and comforting, but have it be something that is really actually good for you. And I love creating stories with tastes, merging different cultures together, and again, kind of building those bridges of empathy through food. Um, so that's something that I'm kind of thinking about doing more of. And then I would like to do more film work. I mean, both maybe behind the camera or as an editor or doing scores. I've done a few movie scores, and I love that process. I love
May I
writing.
ask, what is that process? Do you watch it and sort of go and make it as you go, or do you sort of
Yeah,
have key points that you're like, I need to build to this crescendo here, so I need to start? I've always been really curious about that, actually.
yeah. No, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I think sometimes, well, I think sometimes the most important thing is the what's the word the most important thing is the restrictions. So what
Hmm.
is the sound palette, what instruments are available to me, what is the texture or like the genre or the um is this a percussive thing, is this just strings, am I finding brass, is it synthesizers, is it just a guitar, is it just my harp, is it a whole score based around the accordion.
Hmm.
The last project that I did was around an accordion, and that. But then it was a horror film as well, so like I had to make things feel.
Interesting. I was like, oh, it must have been French, like the most boring.
No, I mean there's
No,
definitely
it was
yeah.
like, how do you do scary tones on an accordion?
It's quite terrifying.
Really?
Yeah.
I just hear like my head is full of Weird Al right now. Like I can't get there.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. Is like, how do you turn these things that are traditionally used in a certain way on their head? And like, that's one of my things with the harp. Is like, I want people to hear the harp and not think hoity-toity or like just angels. Like, I want to make people feel like, no, this is an instrument that is worthy of the most mundane moments, and that is worthy of showcasing sexual energy or anger or disappointment. It's not just for for light and airy feelings, you know. So yeah, that's kind of like
I
what
can
it's.
see how that would be just a very interesting process. Yeah, until you get sick of watching the movie over and over, then
Well,
you're
it's
like,
got to be a
"Well."
good movie.
Yeah, right. Okay, so my last question,
Hmm.
why is what you make, why does it matter to you?
Well, I think it's time to kind of redefine or to like revisit what it is that I make, right? And I
Mhm.
feel that
Yeah, you make quite a few things.
yeah, but at the core of it is like I try I make experiences that facilitate human connection, and I use many different media to do that. I offer permission for people to celebrate the good, the bad, and the ugly as parts of the process of being messy little imagination monkeys that we are. And it's important to me because it offers perspective, and I get to practice living well while I'm on stage and being able to be free to tell my truth on stage in a really vulnerable and exposed way, and then to have the ritual of performance be that the audience claps for me has been a very safe and protected space, and I can't imagine who I would be without it. I know that when I have leaned into and and as I have leaned into being more vulnerable and truthful, that at every turn I'm met with kindness and grace, and people are so grateful that I have stepped out in that way, and that it offers them permission to do that in their life, in their daily life as well. I'm always creating the moments that I wish that somebody would create for me until I find an artist or a group of artists in this community who will do that, then I will be the person.
What's your role?
Yeah. So yeah, you can follow my journey. I'm certainly um, hopefully nowhere near the end of my career as an artist and maker. But I have a website, calvinarsenia.com. You can also check out the venue that I'm currently um, fostering called Greenwood Social Hall. And I'm playing this year in Northern California and in Philadelphia and in Wisconsin. Um, and in Kansas City. So if you're in any of those places, or if you'd like to see me somewhere near you, you can write me at my website as well, and maybe I'll load up my harp and I'll drive to your neck of the woods. I am honored to be able to live this life, and so yeah, thank you again for having me on this podcast.
Happy to. Thank you for agreeing to it. It was so much fun.
Cheers.